Well, Shabbat Shalom. I want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. This is Barbara, and I'm serving as one of your hosts today. And we just want to welcome all our family and friends that are here today on the telephone, the internet, or maybe you're listening to the recording or the YouTube channel. We just want to welcome you, and we invite everyone to go to the website, Lunar Sabbathday.com. It's a great source of information about the Creator's Sabbath. And there's lots of articles there and videos, and you can scroll down to the bottom of the events page and see when we meet and where we meet, the times, the internet link, and we would love to fellowship with you. So today our discussion about the original timekeeping system is going to be about Saturn and Saturday. Saturday, the false Sabbath, and Saturn, the false god. Maybe there'll be some information in here you weren't aware of before. Okay, well, who is Nimrod? Maybe it goes all the way back to Nimrod, and yes, it does. Nimrod is also known as Baal, the Canaanite god. And we know that Baal is the sun god, and Saturn is the god of time. So it all goes back to Babylon. All goes back to the Tower of Babel and Babylon. So we know that Noah's son was Ham, and Ham had a son named Cush, and Cush started the Tower of Babel. And then we had Nimrod, the great-grandson of Noah. And he was a mighty one on the earth, and he was a mighty hunter. He was against Jehovah. And it talks about Nimrod in Genesis 10. So you might wonder why we're going through about Nimrod, but Nimrod is still known today under another name. So Nimrod was the first ruler to attempt a world government. And he had government over all of the land of Shinar. And his kingdom began in Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh and the land of Shinar. They're all listed in Genesis 10. So he had the first world government. So he was a very important king and also a god. And Nimrod was the first high priest of Dagon. And Dagon was the fish god. And if any of you have watched the video, why does the Pope wear a hat shaped like a fish? It all goes back to Dagon. So we're talking a little bit today about where a lot of religions started way back there. So the worship of Nimrod was passed down after Jehovah confused the languages and scattered humanity across the globe. So Nimrod was the god, and he was Dagon, and he's also known as many other names. And he is known as Dagon. Let me see if I can move this thing over here. Dagon and the sea serpent. And he's known as Neptune. These are all names for Nimrod. When all the languages were changed at Tower of Babel, people named their god Nimrod by their own names. He's also known as Poseidon. He's known as Zeus. He's known as Baal. And he's known as Saturn. All of these names go back to Nimrod. So, okay, who is Saturn? Well, when we had all that ancient idolatry, it all came from Nimrod. So, okay, Brother Pete.
Yes, who is Saturn?
These are some of the names for Saturn.
He was Kronos, or Chronos to the Greeks. To the Egyptians, he was alternately Kronos and Osiris. The Babylonians named him Ninus. To the Assyrians, he was Baal, or Belus. The Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, and the Canaanites referred to Saturn as Baal, or Baal. To the Romans, he was Saturn. The legends of Nimrod,
And
the
so
mighty hunter. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted. This is not rehearsed, by the way. The legends of Nimrod, that mighty hunter, passed through all the world, and each civilization named Nimrod as their own god. And so Saturn is the god of time, and did you know the temple of Saturn was in Rome? And here are the remains of the temple of Saturn. And I guess people that go to Rome can go over there and see what's left of the temple for Saturn, a false god, and his name really goes all the way back to Nimrod and Baal, the sun god. So Nimrod was Saturn to the Romans, and Rome itself was originally called the city of Saturn. And like Brother Pete said, the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the Canaanites referred to Saturn as Baal. So really, the name Saturn is the same as Baal, is the same as Nimrod. But we haven't heard the name Nimrod, but we have heard the name Saturn. Okay, so Saturn is the god of time, and remember this verse in Daniel 7:25. He shall think to change times and laws.
The Greek Kronos and the Roman Saturn were the same god. As god of the harvest, he was typically represented as holding a scythe. Kronos, Saturn, was the god of time. As well as such, he was also frequently shown holding babies. The ancient priest told the superstitious people that the sun was dying and must be propitiated with costly sacrifices. Saturn, as the god of time, was implored to continue time. The people were thus compelled to offer the things most precious to them, their children, in order to prolong time. Saturn, god of time and god of the harvest, reaped his harvest of souls in the burned bodies of these young children. In mythology, Kronos ate his own children. Therefore, the proper sacrifice with which to appease Kronos would, of course, be children.
So some of the imagery of Saturn is Father Time here. You would see a baby New Year in his arms, and you might see the scythe or the sickle, the watch representing the time, and of course the child victim. And you might have seen something that looks something like this, maybe a New Year's or Christmas time, and the child victim is baby New Year's. And I know most of you have studied this out, all the paganism of Christmas and New Year's, but I'm wanting to connect it all to Saturn as the false god that is still in our world today.
Father Time. A far more chilling representation of Father Time with baby New Year can be found in this illustration from the 19th century. Father Time, or Saturn, as the god of time, was standing in front of a large clock holding a scythe. The old years, 1886 through 1888, are passing away as full-grown bodies wrapped in burial shrouds. The new year, 1889, is coming in as a young child. While the picture is quite dark, light from the fire is lighting the little boy, and on either side are swirls of smoke from the burning fire at his feet, below the view of the picture. Notice that the new years still to come, 1890 and 1892, are portrayed as child sacrifice victims, all of whom are heavily veiled. All the grotesque elements of this hideous god are contained in this one innocent illustration.
Okay, so the Grim Reaper is also known as Saturn, and we've mostly seen a Grim Reaper at the time of Halloween. But very few, if any, in modern society had recognized either the Grim Reaper or Old Father Time, the pagan connection to the cruelest, most evil of all gods. But in the ancient world, they would have immediately recognized all these symbols as belonging to Saturn, because the emblems which identified Saturn are the same which identify Old Father Time and the Grim Reaper, the sickle, the scythe, all of the things that mark the passage of time. So naming Saturday, here's another connection to Saturn. Saturday, and this is from Time and Date on the internet. Saturday is named after the Roman god and planet Saturn. Saturday is the only day of the week that has retained its Roman origin in English, the only day. And we know that the Romans worshipped the god Saturn. Also over here, the Britannica says the weekly Saturday, Latin Saturnalia Dies, was named for Saturn. So remember, we're going back to Nimrod. Nimrod is Baal and also Saturn.
The Roman Emperor Constantine. How did we get Saturday for our modern calendar? Due to Constantine's Sunday law, issued in AD 321, the Jews were forced to completely abandon the Creator's calendar. Constantine's planetary calendar placed Sunday as an exalted day of worship. Man was forced to worship on a pagan calendar. Saturday was moved to the 7th day of the week.
Okay, so Saturday, let me see if I can move this over, was the first day of the planetary week.
Barb, you've cut out. I don't hear anything.
Okay, sorry. Okay, well, I'll read this part. Sorry. So Saturn Day was the first day of the week, and most people don't know that. You'll see over here on the little figures, the sickle representing Saturn. And many of you that have been around the Creator Sabbath, you've seen this chart many times, but maybe you're new to it, or maybe you want to explain this to your family or your friends that are still keeping Saturday. So Constantine changed the order of the planetary week to help the Jews adapt to Rome's new cycle when he changed everything to Sunday worship. And Saturday, or Saturn Day, was the first day of the planetary week. And then he moved it down here to the 7th day so that the Jews would have a 7th-day Sabbath. And here is a picture of Saturn. You still see the sickle. And up here, the sickle. It represented the god Saturn.
Christians at the time of the calendar change were not confused over Saturday being the Sabbath. Everyone knew that Dies Saturni had recently been moved from the first day of the pagan planetary week to the last. That's from Vornholt, changing the calendar.
Yeah, and I'll try to leave these links below. Thanks, Brother Pete. So, okay, so we've talked about Saturday, we've talked about the Temple of Saturn, and now a holiday is named after Saturn. Maybe you have only heard about it in December, but originally it was Saturnalia. And Romans honored their god in a week-long festival called Saturnalia. And these dates probably sound a little familiar to you, December 17 to 24.
Saturn's great festival was Saturnalia. became the most popular of the Roman festivals, and its influence is still felt in the celebration of Christmas and the Western world's New Year. The Saturnalia was originally celebrated on December 17th, but it was later extended to 7 days. It was the merriest festival of the year.
Okay. So there was a lot of bloodshed and a lot of feasting in the time of Saturnalia, merrymaking, and various ancient celebrations honoring a bloodthirsty god, Saturn. And now people don't really know the Christmas traditions come from a pagan god named Saturn. So Nimrod is Saturn. The god of time is the Roman god Saturn, Kronos. The remains of the temple of Saturn is in Rome. The city of Saturn is Rome. The Roman celebration is called Saturnalia. December now, we see it as Christmas. And Saturday is Saturn's Day. So the god of time is the Roman god Saturn, or Kronos.
When searching the history books and the scripture, it is a constant reminder that Rome was the guilty one for changing the times and laws. Remember Daniel 7:25, where it reveals that Lucifer would attempt to change times and laws. It states, quote, "and think to change times and laws," end quote. This he did through Romanization.
Okay, so the papacy even boasts about changing times and laws, and the facts of history having been forgotten by most people and even many Catholics, but Catholic writers have used planetary week terminology, Saturday, and it would be considered deceptive. It is also likely that many of the Catholic writers themselves were unaware of the full history behind the modern week. Catholic scholars, though, have always known the truth. And this is I'll have Brother Pete read this. It's a little bit from what this Patrick Madrid stated on a radio show, saying that the Catholic Church has always known that they changed the Sabbath and they changed the feast days.
The calendar that we follow, including the Seventh-day Adventist, is not only a calendar that was devised by the Catholic Church, but also it was a calendar that's based upon the solar year, not the lunar year. And the Jewish calendar that was observed in the time of Christ follows the lunar calendar, which is several days short of the solar year. So the great irony is that the Seventh-day Adventists themselves are not worshiping on exactly the same Sabbath day as the Jews of the time of Christ.
And thank you, Brother Pete. And I put a calendar over here that's in the heavens. When we have the new moon, there's no light on the moon, and then halfway through the month, or the first week, we have the quarter moon that announces the Sabbath, and then the full moon announcing the middle Sabbath, and then the last quarter. And these, on the original calendar, were always 7 days from week to week, Sabbath to Sabbath. It was always exactly 7 days. So Nimrod is Saturn, the god of time. And remember, Daniel 7:25 says he thinks to change times and laws. And an ancient proverb claimed, he who controls the calendar controls the world. So who controls you? The day on which you worship, calculated by which calendar you use, reveals which deity you are worshiping. So is the world honoring a false god, Nimrod, Baal, the sun god, and Saturn, all by worshiping on a Saturn day? Saturday, or maybe the sun god on a Sunday. So I gotta move it. I can't read it.
Do you worship the Creator on the day He appointed in the calendar in the heavens, or do you worship a false god, Saturn, on the false Sabbath, that is Saturday?
And then here's a picture of what a Creator's calendar would look like if you're new to this. New moon day would be day 1, and all the Sabbaths are day 8, 15, 22, and 29. His calendar is perfect. There's 6 working days and a Sabbath, 6 working days and a Sabbath. And his calendar is in the heavens. So none who desire to worship the Creator on his holy Sabbath will calculate their worship days by a calendar Sabbath named after a false god. This abomination of desolation dishonors Jehovah and desolates the soul. Only the lunar solar calendar of creation can pinpoint when the true Sabbath occurs. Lay aside the traditions of man. We've all been taught lies by our fathers and traditions of men. And the calendar in the heavens has been hidden, and now it's being revealed to us. So accept only the word of Yah and worship him by his ordained method of his timekeeping system. And we know the heavens declare the glory of Yah, and the skies display his craftsmanship. So I just want to thank Brother Pete for reading, and that will be the end of the recording today. And I encourage you all to go to the website. There are a lot more information there. So thank you.